Good morning. 10:50 a.m. in the morning, Monday, January 5th, 2026. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live, episode 1447. Because of a little bit of an audio glitch this morning, we're going to be playing the epic 3-hour ambient background track from Mount Shrine that was made back in 2023. For those who are unfamiliar with this track, I know I've talked about it before. Mount Shrine was an ambient artist. He lived down in Brazil. He mostly did this mood music. You could find it on channels like Cryo Chamber on YouTube. He died in 2020 or 21 of COVID, even though he was only, I think, 33 or 34 years old. In the last 2 years of his life, he did, I think, some of the best ambient music, ambient tracks I think I've ever heard and may ever be made. Just this amazing Brazilian artist. And it's, of course, you know, our position on that. Probably went to the hospital. Who knows? Might have had a cold. Probably put on supplemental oxygen. And then from there was probably killed. Of course, his family and the community of people who are into this type of music will never acknowledge it. It's just amazing that I discovered him at that time. It was actually, we had a couple of tough years. Of course, I think a lot of people did over the last few years. And it was one night when, I forget what it was. I couldn't sleep, and I decided to wake up and started doing some, burn some late night oil, do some late night research. And I've been starting to listen to this type of music, and then this artist was being played with a candle next to it, and I didn't realize that it was an acknowledgement that they were playing it on loop because he had just died. I just thought that was just the thumbnail picture or something that they had used. So I discovered him, I think the week or two after he died. And it actually wasn't until a few months later that I realized that it was a memorial to him. So there's multiple reasons why I love this artist. The timing, it just felt as though it was brought into my life at a unique moment. But I'm going to let it play in the background because I'm having a terrible time with a very, very faint echo where I can hear my own audio with a microscopic little delay, and it's just enough to drive me crazy. So I have to let this play in the background just a little bit. Hello, Depth. Have you checked out the documentary on Netflix called Bad Boy Billionaires India? No, I haven't. I haven't checked it out. I didn't even know that something like that existed. I know that there was it's interesting. One of the things that have been pushed is the billionaires in China, which I know there are some. But I've also heard, although I've never looked at the videos, that the wealthiest person in the world was some telecom guy or something like that in India. And really, up until the last year or two, in particular last year, I would not have been interested in that. I know India is a massive country. I know that they got their own big economy, and good for them. I got no reason. I'm not one of those people who just trolls the internet trying to find things to complain about from other countries and saying it's all Rothschilds or all India or all Russia or all Ukraine or all the whatever. So it's just not been my thing. But when the infiltration is real, then it becomes an interest. With the United States invasion of India, there we go. There's a little bit of a slip, but of Venezuela, and some would say it's all we did was really take their leader. And for the record, I wish the United States would show as much respect as possible when with Maduro, even if he is a mass murderer, even if he did have a role in so many deaths, even if I don't know. I just think that there's certain standards that we need to live up to. I don't like these ransom photos. I don't like these photos of him, what President Trump just did, bragging that he's on a plane with headphones on and everything else. And again, even if he is as every bit as bad or even worse than they say, we have to maintain standards. We can't expect the United States now cannot expect any better of anyone else should the tables ever be turned. So I wish that a higher standard was being sought after there. That's disappointing. But still, how could that disappointment ever possibly trump the grief and the anger which is felt about the actual underlying cost of the alleged crimes? If someone has time to say, hey, he should have been sitting in a more comfortable chair, that's degrading. What does the world come to? But then not have time to talk about the scale of the fatal drug overdose epidemic in the United States of America, that too is also really twisted and wrong. So, Venezuela does have, many people have said, quite a few untapped natural resources. I think a lot of their oil is offshore. Someone in the chat yesterday made mention that it may not be as pure or higher quality. I'm in no position to be able to judge that. It's, and I don't know what other resources that they have. And so you could see how there have been maybe a few nations around the world, India, United States, and China, have all seemed to have shown interest in these resources in Venezuela. Russia's not in a position to ever need to invade anyone for resources, other than to just be able to escape their own country, because sometimes they can be landlocked if they don't have access to the Mediterranean. But anyways, so there's definitely multiple interests here, and this has been brewing for quite some time, and there's been political turmoil in Venezuela. Now, knowing how involved India is right now in the government of the United States, and I keep pointing the finger very specifically at our head of the National Institutes of Health, Jayanta Bhattacharya, a man who is incapable of understanding why life expectancy is going down, even though that is quite simply his only job is to look after the health of the United States of America and to understand what the greatest threats to our health is and what our greatest opportunities are. That's his only job. We're not asking him, to track the on base percentage of the catcher of I don't know, the Minneapolis Twins. This is his job. His job is, are people living longer, or are they living less long, and if so, why? That's his only job, and his only job he can't do. And his only job, the thing that he can't acknowledge, is one of the greatest costs of life in U.S. history, allegedly, or possibly, going all the way back to the U.S. Civil War. If you want to talk about number of lives lost and age of those lives lost and number of years missed, the only loss of life event that has been worse in the history of the United States has been the United States Civil War, and somehow Jayanta Bhattacharya can't acknowledge that the drug epidemic really has been that bad in the United States of America, which means he gets an F. However, there's also another conflict of interest, and that is that, is he really USA first, or is he working as an agent for somebody else or something else? And this merits investigation, or at the very least consideration. After all, I don't know, and I do not claim to know why the United States did this action in Venezuela. I don't know. We know that there's resources there. We know there's political turmoil. I know firsthand about the drug epidemic, and we do know that even if he's lying, even if Trump is lying, probably lying, but even if he is lying, what he said was that the flow of drugs through Venezuela to the United States was a top concern, maybe even the top concern, at the very least a concern. That's what he said. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. You can debate that, but that's what he said. And the fact that no one is willing to even acknowledge that, they're just trying to dance around it. Well, Can't people at the very least take that on and say that Trump is wrong about that? They can't even acknowledge it because they're all on the take to make sure or to do as much as possible so Americans hear about the drug epidemic as least often as possible. So I've talked about a month or so ago about the Candace Owens decoder. And the Candace Owens decoder is very simple. You look at what Candace Owens is talking about, and then you start doing compound searches of that in India. Sounds so stupid, but believe it or not, it's been one of the most fruitful things I could have suggested over the last month, and it always wins. So when it comes to Venezuela, although now Candace Owens threw her hat in the ring about what she thinks about Venezuela, which was kind of to mock the U.S. action in Venezuela. Let's just do the Venezuela compound searches with India or Maduro compound searches with India, and then we wind up with what we see on the screen here. Follower of an Indian Baba, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, why Venezuela's captured dictator Nicolas Maduro worshipped Satya Sai Baba. If you go to the Wikipedia page for Maduro, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro was raised Catholic. In 2012, it was reported by the New York Times. So this is not a rumor. The New York Times reported that he was a follower of the Indian Hindu guru Satya Sai Baba and previously visited the guru in India in the year 2005. Now, that's 20 years ago. People are allowed to change their views and so on. In 2013 interview, Maduro stated that his grandparents were Jewish from a Sephardic Moorish background and converted to Catholicism in Venezuela. I have no idea. I think we know what Moorish means in a very loose sense. Sephardic, though, is even more interesting. Sephardic Jews, also known as Sephardic Jews or Sephardism or Sephardim, was a Jewish diaspora population associated with the historic Jewish communities of the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, and their descendants. The term Sephardic comes for Sepharad, the Hebrew word for Iberia. These communities flourished for centuries in Iberia until they were expelled in the late 15th century. Over time, Sephardic has also come to refer more broadly to Jews, particularly in the Middle East and North Africa, who worshipped Sephardic religions and customs and legal traditions. Going on later, this is a very interesting movement with people who have communities all over, including even South America as well as India. Going back to Maduro here. So Maduro, he was a follower of this Hindu guru, Satya Sai Baba. And according to what has been reported, at least here in the WION News, this is an Indian news agency, if you were to walk into his whole office is decorated in a way that it worships this Indian Hindu person. Now, Catholicism, I thought, was the big thing in South America. Many people from Italy, many people from Spain, many people from Portugal, all previous bastions of Catholicism. So I, just simple-mindedly would have thought that he had been a Catholic or something along those lines. So I was surprised to hear that this was a Hindu religion. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that that this is why, or I suspect that his pursuit of this religion may not necessarily be the reason. I'm trying to think of how to word that. Well, let me back up a little bit more. I think that this religion is something to consider when it comes to assessing and analyzing the relationship between India and Venezuela. It's possible that he sought this religion or found this religion interesting after India had maybe shown more investments and more political interest in Venezuela. But I think more to the point, given how early 2005 was, he wasn't a president or even a vice president back then. I think it would have been more of an in for Modi and for other people within India to maybe develop some sort of bond with the leadership of Venezuela under Maduro. This religion, which we can get a link of here, again, let's read it. Maduro was raised Catholic in 2012. It was reported by the New York Times that he was a follower of the Indian Hindu guru Satya Sai Baba, who you can see here. He's got a whole Wikipedia page. And, not to judge, but man, I'm telling you what, if that's an album cover, that's an album I want to buy. That looks like one of the coolest early 70s undiscovered rock bands. I mean, come on. Come on, dude. Look, if you saw that guy podcasting right now, you would want to listen. No matter what, he could someone like that, with that chair, those flowers, and that hair, could podcast right now with like an empty title on their podcast, and you go, I have to listen. Tell me more. I'm interested. I'm interested. And I don't know, what is he holding, mail? He just went to his post office box? Anyways, Satya Sai Baba, also known as Ratnakaram Satyatharayanan Raju, he was born in 1926 and he died in 2011, was an Indian god-man and philanthropist. At age 14, he claimed to be the reincarnation of Shirdi Sai Baba and left his home saying, "My devotees are calling me, I have my work." Satya Sai Baba's followers have attributed to him a range of miraculous abilities, including the materialization of vibhuti, or holy ash, and other small objects such as rings, necklaces, and watches. He was also believed to have performed spontaneous healings, resurrections, and exhibited clairvoyant abilities. Additionally, claims were made regarding his ability to be in multiple places simultaneously by location, just like podcasters, as well as his omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. I can't even pronounce that word. Is that Lenny Kravitz? No, it's someone that is possibly almost cooler than Lenny Kravitz. It's Satya Sai Baba. Satya Sai Baba is this Indian guru who is, since 2005, worshipped by Maduro. Maduro worships an Indian who passed in 2012, by the way, an Indian religion. Maduro's office is a worship to him. This is Maduro. I would have expected Catholic or atheist or agnostic or something like that, right? This is not what I would have expected. Okay. So this is where, and I can still hear my little echo, and it is driving me crazy. I'm going to just pretend I can't hear it. Now, Satya Sai Baba, and I'm going to do a side-by-side with something that you... Has anyone ever heard of... It was kidding. Of course you're kidding. We're having some fun here. We're having some fun. By the way, I expect a lot of sarcasm in the chat, okay? Please, sarcasm away. Drop the sarcasm in there. People who can do sarcasm well have a way of being able to suggest to other people that it's sarcasm. So how many people here have heard of Rajneesh? Is he maybe related to Indian cult? Whoa, Reginald, you spoiled the fun, Reginald. I should be mad at you. How many heard of Rajneesh? Because that's exactly where I was going with this. Okay. So Rajneesh, Rajneesh. So Satya Sai Baba and Ojno Rash and I apologize to everyone for the multiple mispronunciations I'm going to make. I will be as respectful as possible. But if I get a sense that someone's a bad actor, I'm going to intentionally become less and less. I'm going to make less and less attempts to be accurate. So Satya Sai Baba and Osho Rajneesh were both influential Indian spiritual leaders, but they differentiated significantly in their core philosophies, teaching methods, and public perceptions. So Satya Sai Baba was born in 1926 and died in 2011. Satya is this cool dude here, whose album we all want to buy right now. He can play the bass guitar really well, sort of like the character Token on South Park. Even if it's like, God darn it, he can play the bass. So that's Satya Sai Baba, and Osho Rajneesh was born 1931, died 1990. Satya Sai Baba was focused primarily on bhakti yoga, or the path of devotion and selfless service. Osho Rajneesh focused primarily on jnana yoga, or the path of knowledge and self-inquiry, alongside various meditation techniques. Satya Sai Baba emphasized universal love, peace, truth, and righteous conduct, encouraging service to others as service to God. Rajneesh advocated for a radical approach to spirituality, combining Eastern mysticism with Western therapeutic techniques, free love, and a critique of traditional religion and societal norms. Satya Sai Baba, this is Satya Sai Baba, who Maduro of Venezuela loves. Satya Sai Baba was known for performing miracles such as materializing objects, which his followers believed were signs of his divinity, and skeptics claimed were simple magic tricks. Osho Rajneesh utilized dynamic and passive meditations and discourse to thousands of visitors, many from the West. And then we can get into lifestyle, public imagery, and claims. So this is, again, Satya Sai Baba, the person that, according to the WION of India, Maduro follows. Okay. Now, why did I look up Rajneesh? Why did I go into Rajneesh? As I've said many times, the book Germs, which was published, meaning it was available for purchase, September 9th, 2001, written by Judith Miller, Stephen Engelberg, and William Broad. Since I've said this is one of the most important books in understanding 9/11. Let's put it this way. I have not found one book in the world ever. There will never be a book better than this at understanding 9/11, period. There may be other ones that are as important. One of the reasons why a book like this, that is this important, could never, ever be beat, is because this book was published before 9/11. Everything that's printed after 9/11 is an assessment. It is bias. It is noise. It's a distraction. It's based upon breadcrumbs which could have been laid after the fact. Even if I wrote a book on 9/11, which I plan to someday, and I will do everything possible for it to be valuable, the truth is that I could never recreate the value of a book that was published before 9/11. I would encourage people to read my book, and I would sell it as being as accurate and as unbiased as possible because I was using sources from before 9/11. But I could never beat the source. I never could. I could simply use it and offer it and interpret it and analyze it. So the reason why I bring up the book on 9/11 is the very, very, very first chapter in the book is called The Attack. The Attack. And the chapter, The Attack, is about an event that happens in 1984 in the state of Oregon. And you can go to #Bio911Truth and you can listen to the full narration of the book, much of which comes from Audible, but almost 30+%, almost 40% really, of the book is currently absent on Audible, which makes this also the most censored book in the history of Audible. Just saying. So this whole chapter is about how there was this cult, the Rajneesh cult, the followers of Bhagwan Shri, meaning Sir God in Sanskrit, Rajneesh, and how many millions of dollars they paid to be part of this cult in the state of Oregon. And at some point, there was nearby a food poisoning where there was a restaurant where salmonella and some other, biological materials were, is believed, distributed intentionally on an open salad bar, which resulted in some deaths and many people getting extremely sick, which makes the attack the first documented biological terror event in the history of the United States. Now, there were some cases of testing biological agents in the United States before this, but never before was there an actual biological attack in the United States. So, one of the proof points that there can be a biological attack anywhere, and that they have happened anywhere, is the Rajneesh cult in Oregon. You with me so far? Hello, Khatum. Okay, very good. They bought a big wrench. Thank you, Katumba. So now here's the question, and I apologize for being such a nimwit for never thinking about this. The poisoning at that salad bar, that event was a public relations nightmare. Of course, it backfired. The FBI got involved. It wound up costing the cult. It wound up costing the leader, and it just was very bad. Now, of course, they made the motivation of it is suggested that they were trying to injure or kill people who might have been politically opposed to cult members who were moving to the area and becoming having more political power, having more voting power, right? That's what they suggest. Why would this cult do something which would backfire so spectacularly and be so easy to trace back to them? There's the question. So the book lays out the case that the cult is getting more people to move to the area, that this Mr. Rajneesh, the head of the cult, he's getting watches and planes and cars and money, and there's all kinds of open sex. Here's the thing. This book is very, very derogatory about this cult. And the cult maybe deserves every piece of negative criticism. I haven't met anyone in this cult. I'm certainly not going to go to any of their cult meetings. But the book, it lays it on thick that this group is bad news. It's selfish, it's self-indulgent, that the leader is crazy, etc. Which is usually the type of thing which is only reserved for Republicans and Christians, to be honest with you, and many books like this. But here, they lay it on thick. So this Rajneesh cult, which is led by this Indian man who died not too long after that, if we go back to these to our work here, if we go back and if we look at the side by side here, and again, this is made possible by Google AI, the side by side of the Rajneesh, Osho Rajneesh versus Satya Sai Baba. So Rajneesh died in 1990. He died only like 5 years after the Germs book came out, or I should say 5 years after the event, but 10 years before the book was published. So he's old news by then. This book lays the case of a potential biological terror event from an Indian religious cult. This book lays that case. Now, at the time, I viewed the book's first chapter of Germs, which I say you have to listen to the audio, you have to read it. You have to listen to my audio, not because I'm just such a charming personality with incredible hair, but you also need to listen to my version because I provide you the 30 to 40% that's in the first printing of the book that is not in the Amazon Audible audiobook. And I highlight reasons why each of those sections is probably omitted and that omitted from the Amazon audio version. Plus, I do deep dives on those sections and other related things, which I believe the book glances over. Okay. I just thought that the book chose the first chapter because they were trying to find something or anything to suggest that a biological terror event could happen. I just thought it was the best that they could do. There really haven't been a lot of biological terror events or anything that could count as a biological terror event or intentional poisoning of people aside from 9/11, or I should say aside from COVID-19 and the opioid epidemic, but we're not going to get there. So I just figured, okay, so this is the best they could do, and then they called it a day. What I didn't consider, though, is the possibility that there might have been a reason why that specific cult was chosen. Now, wouldn't it be odd if the Rajneesh cult, which wrapped up in 1990, I guess, the Rajneesh cult was competitive with another Indian cult which had been run up until 2011 by Satya Sai Baba of India? Wouldn't it be odd if they are planting seeds to lead people in one direction, but maybe the other direction? They're almost trying to lay a positive story about something else. Maduro worshipped this Satya Sai Baba, and I believe still does. And again, the New York Times broke that story, and Indian news agencies still support it. Other people follow this cult as well. Good morning, Khatum. Other people follow this cult as well, including, and this is where it gets pretty controversial, let's see here. I will zoom in a bit on this. SHASHI Tharoor. If you don't know the name SHASHI Tharoor is a member of the Indian Parliament who was in 2006 forwarded as India's candidate for the post of the Secretary General of the United Nations. SHASHI Tharoor was almost the Secretary General of the United Nations. What we know about SHASHI Tharoor is that basically all of his books right now are being published by Skyhorse Publishing, the publishing firm that he was with previously. SHASHI, or let me see here. The publishing firm that SHASHI books originally were written for was purchased by Skyhorse, so now Skyhorse republishes those. SHASHI Tharoor is one of the, I would say, the five most politically important people in the nation of India. He's often side by side with Modi. SHASHI Tharoor was, on the date of September 11th, 2001, SHASHI Tharoor was in New York City, next to Kofi Annan, who was the head of the United Nations at that time, and believe it or not, Klaus Schwab. So Klaus Schwab, SHASHI Tharoor, and Kofi Annan, sounds like a joke, right? Walk into a bar. But Klaus Schwab, SHASHI Tharoor, and Kofi Annan were all together in the morning of September 11th, 2001, for a United Nations meeting. And at least two of them claimed that they saw one of the planes fly into the Twin Towers. SHASHI Tharoor, his son right now is one of the top editors at the Washington Post. Last name Tharoor. So you can read his newspaper articles and how they impacted September 11th, 2001. Tharoor is very visible in India right now and very confrontational regularly with the Trump administration. He had some very combative remarks against Charlie Kirk around the time that Charlie Kirk was making statements about the United States would be best served by staying out of any conflict between the United States and Pakistan. SHASHI Tharoor, according to this article, let's see here, strongly endorsed the clandestine kingmaker. In 1993, he visited and later strongly endorsed the clandestine kingmaker of India, Satya Sai Baba, whose devotees include a series of prime ministers and presidents, not least. Thereafter, SHASHI Tharoor was chosen as India's candidate. So this article suggests, and this could be baloney, but nobody. Let's go here. Nobody wrote this article because there was no demand for it. This article was written either because it's truthful, or to simply to influence people's public opinion with lies. So the fact that they are choosing this topic is in and of itself interesting, whether or not it's true. But I have a feeling that there's a lot of truth to this. The International Herald Tribune on November 3rd, 2000, in the International Herald Tribune on November 3rd, 2002, SHASHI Tharoor endorsement came in from a most unbalanced story about Satya Sai Baba. Wow. So SHASHI Tharoor wrote, quote, a private audience with the ochre-robed guru was astounding at several levels. And again, SHASHI Tharoor, as you know, always speaks with a very, very rich Oxford English accent. Sai Baba uttered insights about my family and myself that he could not possibly have known. So he thinks this guy is a god also. Let's go. You don't believe me? Let's go to YouTube and see what it spits out at us. Let's see what YouTube will tell us. Let's search for Sai Baba and Tharoor. Let's see what we can find here. So this is some pretty old video here.
लेकिन साईं के दरबार में हाजिरी लगाने थरूर अकेले नहीं पहुंचे। उनकी महिला मित्र सुनंदा पुष्कर भी उनके साथ थी। दोनों ने शिरडी के साईं धाम में विधिवत तरीके से साईं की पूजा अर्चना की। थरूर और सुनंदा शिरडी के
That's SHASHI Tharoor there in the robe with his wife at the time. I think he's been married 2 or 3 times. So this is an old video. You can tell the quality is really bad. The fact that it's bad quality, to me, here suggests that people have deleted it and people have been trying to re-upload it. Now, I suspect that since this video has been made, SHASHI Tharoor has been distancing himself from Sai Baba. Let's and if you want to hear some other Tharoor videos, matter of fact, I think I have a couple myself. Let's just go to YouTube and search for, let's see here, Tharoor and Trump. Let's see what Tharoor is complaining about today with respect to Trump. Let's see here. This was from 2 months ago. I don't want to do the one from 2 months ago. Let's see if we can just go within the last, this week.
Well, as you know, I'm here in Wayanad for a Congress party meeting, far away from all the international news. But all I can say is that it is a momentous event. You don't see every day a country marching in and capturing the president of a sovereign nation, member state of the United Nations. I think on the actual incident, I would leave it to the government to express their views. But there is no doubt that there is, for some years now, international law and the UN Charter are not being observed in the old ways. And now we are seeing, in many, many ways, a sort of version of might is right prevailing in international affairs, which has very serious implications for all of us. And every country has to adjust its diplomacy accordingly. See, on the Sabarimala issue, I think there is a strong feeling across the Kerala public that what was done by these people in stealing the gold was a betrayal both of their sacred trust, because these were officials of the temple who were allegedly trying to polish and burnish the gold. Instead, they stole it. But equally, it's also a betrayal of the ordinary people, the worshippers.
So, of course, he's going to be very much against it. He has been a UN mouthpiece. He was the right-hand man of Kofi Annan for years as the head of communications for the United Nations. It's a name that everyone should know. I've become convinced that SHASHI Tharoor, Tharoor, is globally important enough that he should be known as much as Prime Minister Modi, Putin, President Xi of China, and there's probably a list of 50 or 100 leaders around the world. And again, there's always people behind leaders too, right? It's not like Tharoor walks into the room and everybody takes orders from him. They're all reporting to other people as well, or trying to balance other things as well. But at some point, you have to use the clues that you get to understand, the world as it is. So let's also go to YouTube, and I know I should have a video. I know I've shared videos about this, but go to Tharoor, T-H-A... Oh my goodness! I think that this is. I'll bet you that this is. Whatchamacallit? I think that this is a deep fake. Let's see if we can watch it.
Obviously, did not discover the Americas. The Americans knew that they were there. So the Americans had been there for 10,000 years, and the recent estimates pushed that back to more than 20,000 years from the first migrations across Beringia.
Jeffrey Sachs has been working also for the United Nations since the 1990s. Jeffrey Sachs was the lead author of some United Nations charter, some future charter that was released, believe it or not, right around the time of September 11th, 2001. SHASHI Tharoor is a 20, 30-year plus close friend of SHASHI Tharoor. So every time you're seeing Jeffrey Sachs, you should be thinking of his associate SHASHI Tharoor at the United Nations. These are alliances that matter deeply. Jeffrey Sachs is frequently in India, talking about how India is really the future global geopolitical power center. He's believed this for a long time. He's also, Jeffrey Sachs, the most frequent guest speaker at the Vatican. And I think the Vatican also has vested interests in this as well. So right now, Jeffrey Sachs is releasing this is a live stream supposedly somewhere. I don't know. He's really crying right now over U.S. actions in India. He's a hardcore communist. I don't know what he is. He's a hardcore something or other. I just don't see him aligned with the United States. He never says anything positive about the United States except when the United States is in a state of submitting to other places. People are free to argue about all the different ways of constructing governments, of authority, of tax structure. I don't have all the answers to that stuff. I really don't. If I said, I'm Mark Kulak, and I know that this type of government is best, I would be lying to you because I don't know. I've never studied all the different types of economies and political structures. I have gut feelings, and I do also believe as an engineer, one of the rules of it being an engineer is if it's not broke, you don't fix it. Because if it's not broke, that means it's kind of working, and most likely things are working for reasons that you don't really understand. How many times have I, professionally, as an engineer, walked up to something, a piece of code, in my case being a software engineer, and said, wow, this looks messy. I think I could improve it. And I tried to improve it. I thought I did something good, and then things broke because things were working in ways that no one even understood in the first place. So you don't just, waltz into a room, you don't waltz into a nation and just start moving things around. If it's not terrible, you have to be cautious before you just start ripping out infrastructure and rebuilding it. Anyways, the fact that Jeffrey Sachs remains, and this is still one of my simplest ways of assessing if someone is on a righteous course and gives a damn about my country or not. If you can't talk about very simple problems that we know impact more Americans than anything else, such as why can't people afford to have children? Or, for example, why is it that 1 out of every 30 deaths right now is a fatal drug overdose of someone under the age 40? Or, so on and so forth. If we can't talk about the simplest things which have impacted the most lives of Americans, if you want me to be upset, you can't even admit that they are happening, we have a problem. We have a problem right there. You obviously are not listening to what most people are saying. And Jeffrey Sachs refuses to talk about anything that impacts the lives of most Americans critically right now. Every American should have the ability to have land that they own within their own country without having to be turned into debt slaves. If you can't have land in your own country, what do you got? So, but again, I'm getting off course here. Point though is Sachs' long-time relationship and support of India, in particular his relationship with SHASHI Tharoor, is very important. Sachs is very loud right now against the U.S. invasion and the actions in Venezuela. SHASHI Tharoor, Indian news is going overboard. They are so mad at what the U.S. is doing in Venezuela. And as I said in my show last night, what the U.S. is doing in Venezuela may be a horrible mistake. It could be something which is the end of the United States as we know it. It could turn into war that kills millions. I don't know what the real root of the motivation of the invasion is. I think to suggest that it's done because somebody wanted some oil money is, while maybe it's a factor somewhere, to think that that's the main motivation is stupid. It's just absolutely stupid. I also don't believe that the only reason that it happened was because of the flow of narcotics through Venezuela. I don't believe that. But I believe it might have been a consideration. And we know that Trump said it was a major consideration. So, given the fact that at least some narcotics come through Venezuela, and given the fact that the president said it was a major reason, then people should respond by talking about that and debunking that, which might be appropriate. If it's not true, feel free to debunk it. What's crazy is how many people, especially within alt media, won't even say it because their task is to make sure that no one even comes to the realization of how serious the problem is, and that, oh, by the way, we have a director of the National Institutes of Health who is unable to identify that the reason why life expectancy has gone down so dramatically in the last several years is the fatal drug overdose epidemic. He should know that. It should be at the tip of his tongue every time he's asked why that's happening. It shouldn't be a mystery that requires more investigation. And he could start... Jayanta Bhattacharya could have been addressing that already simply through an awareness campaign. I don't think the U.S. needed to invade any country in order to combat that problem as its primary first step. Awareness. Step one, awareness. He can't even say it. So now we think of how spectacular it is. We have a president that just justified the invasion of a foreign nation because of drugs, because of the drug epidemic and narcotics trafficking. At the same time, we have a director of the National Institutes of Health who is incapable of understanding why life expectancy is going down and won't talk about the fatal drug overdose epidemic. So either Trump is totally wrong, he might be wrong, okay, but Jayanta Bhattacharya is definitely wrong. He has never been more exposed and looking more ridiculous and more anti-American than he does now. But let's get back to the title of the show here. The title of the show is Thinking About the Current Head of India, Maduro, or the previous head maybe, and his religious choice of this Satya Sai Baba as the religious figure who from India, he passed in 2011, and his religion, fantastic, that he chooses to support. And Satya Sai Baba is also the same religion that even according to the New York Times and according to video and according to his own words, SHASHI Tharoor of India is also a devotee of, or was a devotee of. Now, in the last several years, Tharoor has distanced himself from this cult, saying he had nothing to do with it, which now might be true. He might have distanced himself with, but in the past he was showing up to a lot of events and thinking that the guy had the powers of God. SHASHI Tharoor is the right-hand man of Kofi Annan, for many years, the previous director of the United Nations, going back to September 11th, 2001. It appears as though the former prime minister, I don't know how you want to say it, of Venezuela, his religious choice with Satya Sai Baba is something that needs to be considered, because it implies a potential relationship with Venezuela that is very deep. And maybe many people in Venezuela weren't even aware of it. Maybe. Now, maybe he was told to choose this religion because Venezuela wanted political influence, or maybe he was already a member of this religion. There are these more eccentric religions. There's quite a few that come out of India. I'm sure that others come out of other places of Europe or China or Nepal or Africa, where if you find people with money just think it's cool to join these religions, these spiritual religions where they do yoga and eat ants and lay around on carpets and have group sex and whatever. It becomes something cool that people do. They make, oh, I'm better. You're just a plain old Christian or Muslim. Why would you do something so lame when you can find? I found this guy who likes to sit on his carpet on a tree limb all day. He must be way cooler. He's connected with a god in the Himalayas, etc. So people are suckers for these types of things. It could be that Maduro, at some point, because he wasn't necessarily born in the money, most people in South America aren't, that after some time in Cuba, after some time maybe making some dollars, his social circles might have changed, and he might have been introduced to this religious figure in India. And at a later time, his connection with that religious figure in India turned into an opportunity for embassies and other political connections from India to have an inroad into Venezuela. That's a possibility, okay? I'm not saying that he was pulled into it because India told him to do it. It could have, which one came first? It's possible that his interest in that religion came first and would thus help explain a lot of the, fallout from that. Okay. So let's look at a few more data points on here. We know that Charlie Kirk made some statements in May of 2025 after a border conflict, a short border conflict between Pakistan and India that made it look like tensions were rising between India and Pakistan. And Charlie Kirk made statements on his show that the U.S. should not get involved with the conflict between India and Pakistan. His comments even suggested that he would have been more predisposed to working with India than Pakistan should the U.S. ever get involved, because Pakistan was naughty and Pakistan is Muslim. So it's not like Charlie Kirk didn't have some bias. He did have some bias. And I do not believe that what Charlie Kirk says on any platform is going to change world history. But those statements, I think, were part of a series of a chain of events which maybe he didn't start, but he got caught up in. And there's probably a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. You can follow the timeline. Almost all the evidence that Charlie Kirk was being planned to be assassinated by Israel, and Israel is really their future main alliance is India, assassinated by Israel, traces back to after the date that Charlie Kirk made those comments on his podcast. For example, someone in Israel Googling 1 billion times the name of the medical examiner in Utah. They couldn't use a VPN. They couldn't save the result. Come on. That's manufactured evidence, and that all happened after the date of those statements. I also offer you evidence that Charlie Kirk's death had something to do with India because one of Charlie Kirk's best friends, sometime after the death of Charlie Kirk, was appointed to be the new ambassador to India. Very curious role. Right now, it's probably the most important ambassador role in the whole of the United States government. But it was given to a relatively young person, a man named Sergei Gore, who wasn't even born in the United States. In fact, I believe he was born in Uzbekistan. But he has become a good friend of Charlie Kirk, and he is now the new ambassador to India. And it's the only position, the only swearing-in ceremony that Erika Kirk attended was the next swearing in of the next U.S. ambassador to India, who is now Sergei Gore. Very interesting, very powerful position. Also a position that has been filled by people who I talk about extensively, but no one else will even mention their name, such as the previous ambassador to India, Richard Verma, who's connected to many, many people in our network, including associates of the previous ambassador to India, Richard Verma, who have directly communicated with and have even sat on the couch of Jonathan Cooey, PhD, Giga-Ohm Biological. So associates of the previous ambassador to India have sat on the couch of Jonathan Cooey. This is a proven fact. At least two have sat on the couch several times of Jonathan Cooey, PhD, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What are the odds of that? That previous associates of the ambassador to India have sat on the couch of Jonathan Cooey. What are the odds of that? How many people do you know who have been friends to the previous ambassador to India? And now the new U.S. ambassador to India is also a friend of Charlie Kirk. And the timeline of Charlie Kirk being identified as someone that needed to be killed starts after Charlie Kirk made statements regarding the U.S. relationship and involvement in the conflict between Pakistan and India. Now, that's an awful lot of India for anyone to chew and to swallow in a short period of time. So, given the fact that this incredible, unprecedented arrest that the United States has made, sweeping in and getting Maduro somehow, some way, I don't know, maybe Maduro's even part of it. I don't know, but it has happened. And the loudest voices now against it, of course, there's going to be people in Venezuela and other loyalists within Venezuela, but also seem to be coming from the pro-India Jeffrey Sachs and the government of India and India's media. Even U.S. media has been weirdly agnostic on it. You know, trust me, the U.S. media is always against this type of stuff. And that's another weird data point. I don't know how to factor that one in yet. The people that seem to be most against it are the fake Trump supporters. You know, the Kim Iversons, the Massies, who's led around by Ro Khanna of India, Tucker Carlson, and now, interesting, Candace Owens. Candace Owens is now tweeting, mocking the U.S. invasion of Venezuela, which perhaps, maybe it should be mocked. Maybe it's based upon everything wrong. It's a total lie. It's a total disaster. Candace Owens may be right, but once again, Candace Owens has been unable to even say the word India. Candace Owens seems to be unaware that Charlie Kirk's setup started after he made statements about India. Candace Owens complained excessively about Erika Kirk going to Washington, D.C. for a swearing-in ceremony, which, by the way, was for the next U.S. ambassador to India. Candace Owens loves to talk about the French wanting to kill her, even though Candace Owens' first radio appearance as a newfound conservative in 2017 coincides perfectly with the beginning of the blogging by some person in France that the wife of President Macron has a penis. And then Candace Owens then goes on to make her entire career talking about an alleged penis of the president's wife of France. And France right now, all of their military deals and even the future of Airbus are tied up with India. Candace Owens, I don't think, sees the big picture here. She hasn't been briefed. People have learned in the past, you keep Candace Owens in the basement. You keep her in the basement, broadcasting. You make sure that you can control everything she says because she just goes She goes too far, too often. And she seems to be unable to identify this herself, or unwilling, one or the other. So here we are. The revelation that I had was, as I said a little while ago, why would the book Germs, which talks about a competitive organization, a competitive religious group, the Rajneesh, why would the book Germs be allowed to be printed? Why would it be endorsed with such a negative, vile assessment of an Indian cult religion in its first chapter, the Rajneesh? I mean, it really lays it on thick. It doesn't like it. And the Rajneesh were responsible for this one documented terrorist event, biological terror event. It was salmonella poisoning, really, where it was so easy for them to figure it out. Why would the Rajneesh themselves have done that attack? Knowing, I'm going to assume that they weren't stupid, misled, mystified, maybe, but stupid? No. Because people who joined them were engineers, scientists, other people who had inheritance to spend. They must have been able to war game it a little bit and know that they would have been found out. It makes me wonder if they were sabotaged. Now, far be it from me to want to spend my time defending, an eclectic cult of millionaires that's screwing people over and getting people into, hedonistic group sex. That's definitely not my thing, my concern. But I should have asked the question: why them, and why was it so easy to figure out? And why does it get visibility in a book about biological terrorism right before 9/11? The book was published September 9th, 2001. Very good question. Well, this group is not the same as this Satya Sai Baba, which is followed by Modi. It's not the same as the Satya Sai Baba, which SHASHI Tharoor, the right-hand man of Kofi Annan, SHASHI Tharoor, who is one of the most powerful people in India, one of the more powerful people in the world. It's not the same one that he followed either. Another data point. If I go to the book series, I should say the magazine series that I have on from this magazine called Talk, which I'm almost done scanning all of them in, my Talk magazine series. The magazine, which was produced by Miramax, Disney, primarily funded by Harvey Weinstein, starting in 1999 with a mission to support Hillary Clinton, of course, and to seed all kinds of information about the U.S. military, Hollywood actors, biological terrorism, suitcase nukes, and so on throughout 1999, 2000, 2001. That magazine, Talk, which has been impossible to get digitally anywhere, which is why I've invested so much time and money in it, and many of the editors of that Talk magazine went on to become members of Radar magazine, which we have here. Radar magazine, which was funded starting in 2005 by Jeffrey Epstein. Radar magazine is, if I search through those art magazines, I find multiple references to Satya Sai Baba. Multiple. A name that I otherwise, at least up until now, definitely would have just skimmed right over. Like, okay, whatever. But this Harvey Weinstein pre-9/11 magazine mentions him multiple times and in a very promising, positive way. I can't quite figure it out. If you turn on the show here, expecting to find answers for all of this stuff, I don't have all the answers. What I do have, though, are some of the more important questions and observations that apparently no one else can see. Or I should say, other people must be getting paid not to see. His head looks disproportionately big to his body, doesn't it? I mean, he's not necessarily a fat person. But his head, very weird. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't know, but this can't be a coincidence. It just can't be. It just can't be. At the very least, I think that this is proof that the relationship between the UN and Venezuela and India is being definitely way underreported, way misunderstood. China, it took China 2 or 3 days to make a statement about it. Also very strange. Oddly quiet at first, now that they are speaking out against it. But what are they going to do? I can't, almost no one's going to say, hey, great job. At first, China was so slow in responding to it. All I could think of was, well, I think that they must have endorsed it. And I think China was on board. I think China right now is among the largest consumers of oil from Venezuela. There's no way, come on. There's no way the U.S. did this action without somebody calling someone else in China within the political insides to tell them it was going to happen, or to figure out how it was going to go down. There's no way. There's no way China was caught off guard. The U.S. certainly doesn't need the oil. We have more than enough of our own, at least for the time being. So, let me 1 second here. You know what? Let me get this playing again here. 1 second. All right, let's do some comments here for a little while here. Jeffrey Sachs and Paul Offit trigger my spidey senses instantly. And Jeffrey Sachs had Peter Hotez. Peter Hotez got his opportunity to go to the Vatican thanks to Jeffrey Sachs. And Paul Offit and Peter Hotez aligned? I think they are as well. Oh, yeah, Jeffrey Sachs. Here's one of those. I know I've mentioned this before, so my core audience will remember this one here. Jeffrey Sachs, the most frequent author, the most frequent co-author of Jeffrey Sachs's wife. And Jeffrey Sachs's wife does these economic policy / infectious disease cost research papers. The most frequent co-author of Jeffrey Sachs's wife is Peter Hotez. Period. If you go to the Peter Hotez page, let's see here, you go to the H's, H-O-T, H-O-T-E-Z, H-O-T-E-Z. It is Hotez, the most frequent author of Jeffrey Sachs's wife, who goes by the name of Sonia Erich Sachs. You can... Excuse me. You can just go to Google, Sonia Erich Sachs, and I believe she has her own Wikipedia page. If she doesn't, that's weird. Yeah, No, she doesn't. She doesn't have her own Wikipedia page. That's amazing. So, yeah. So her most frequent co-author is Jeffrey Sachs, the wife of Jeffrey Sachs. Her most frequent co-author is Peter Hotez. And Jeffrey Sachs was on the Charlie Rose show at least once, I think several times, with Peter Hotez. So Jeffrey Sachs and Peter Hotez are also, they have released reports together. They have been on the Charlie Rose show together. They are also very close. Peter Hotez must be frequently over at the Jeffrey Sachs household for wine and cheese parties. They're pretty tight. And from that, I would extrapolate that therefore Peter Hotez must be to some extent friendly with SHASHI Tharoor, as Tharoor and Jeffrey Sachs go back to the 1990s with the United Nations. No doubt. Absolutely no doubt. China is very ethnocentric. Yeah, they are. China has 10,000 years to show that they want to dominate the world through military and political means. They kind of haven't. They're very politically powerful around the world, but between the language barrier, I don't know. Not something I worry about every day. Peter Hotez is a strange person. He engaged with you in childish personal insults. About 20 emails he did. Wow, that's weird. I wonder why he would even, no offense to you, waste his time with anyone in our group. Let's see. China's foreign policy seems to be centered around making money through trade. Yes, and that's absolutely true. Michael Hudson said about the U.S.-China relationship, the U.S. thinks of itself as the head office in China is its manufacturing arm. Well, that's definitely the way it seems to have been over the last 20-plus years. I agree. Chinese diplomats were present in Venezuela when Maduro was captured. Really? Thank you, Arthur. Arthur in the chat says that Chinese diplomats were present when Venezuela when Maduro was captured. That would suggest that China, well, let's just say, was at the very least aware of it. Maybe China was strong-armed into accepting it. Maybe China even suggested it. I have no freaking idea. I don't believe in people getting on the air and wasting time saying things that suggesting that some things are certain when they really don't know. I do not know what is going on with Venezuela. I have no idea. All I can do is make the observations and assess the data that's out there and just try to think logically about it. I do not know for sure how much, for real, the drug problem factors in. All I know is the president has said it factored in. So people are free to agree or disagree with that. And as someone who is, I'm 100% transparent, motivated to remain a researcher, I should say an analyst and archivist who makes podcasts, was because of the unrecognized, unappreciated extent and severity of the drug overdose epidemic in the United States, starting in the 2000 teens. That's what pulled me into it. So even if Trump is lying about it, it's still an opportunity for me, for at least some people, to have to talk about it a little bit and dispel it if they want to, if they don't believe it's related to Venezuela. And that's a very fair assessment. The unwillingness of people to even acknowledge it still, like Kim Iverson, is amazing. Amazing. Vilma, in 2024, Candace published a podcast about her followers talking about someone wanting to kill her. Yeah, she likes to talk a lot about that. Candace Owens, since high school, people wanted to kill her. Okay, this is not going to be a popular thing to say, all right? But I just have to say it, all right? Candace has said in high school that people want to kill her. She said in when she started making her show, her product at the Social Autopsy. Candace said that people wanted to kill her. When she started the podcast, make her videos, Candace Owens said that people wanted to kill her. When Candace Owens was a turning point, she has said people wanted to kill her. Recently, Candace has said people want to kill her. The president of France wants to kill her. At some point, right? At some point, you have to go, Mrs. Owens, if I may. There's only one thing that all of these accusations have in common. Why do so many people, you have white people, black people, French people, American people, young people, old people, liberal people, conservative people, loud people, quiet people, rich people, poor people, all wanting to kill you? How is that possible? So either it's not true or it's like, at some point, look in the mirror. Why did, I don't know. It's you have to be careful. You even sarcastically say something like that. Someone could spin it as a call for a threat or something. But anyways, there you go. Hello, Vilma. It's hypocritical of Tony Lyons to publish Tharoor books while now kissing Trump's rear. It is. I'm sure that Tony Lyons will. Well, Tony Lyons also publishes all the books that are kind of quietly backstabbing Trump also. This book, All That Glitters is Gold, which I've shown multiple times, the one about the Vogue magazine, the Anna Wintour versus Tina Brown of Talk magazine, that also came out of Skyhorse. Although you would like to think that book is a thorough investigation into their relationship, it suggests a heavy focus on Trump. Now, absolutely, without doubt, Donald Trump was part of the Vogue sphere. He was part of the Harvey Weinstein sphere. He partied. He was at parties with Jeffrey Epstein. It would be weird if a book about Tina Brown and Anna Wintour, Devil Wears Prada inspiration, never mentioned Trump. That would be an incomplete book. Trump should be in there. But the book suggests that Trump is a central figure, which I just can't believe it. I'm sorry. That sounds like a book which was written to use everything that they could as again, just like the Michael Wolff stuff, okay? It's hit stuff on Trump. It just gets old. It really does just get so old. Tina is making the rounds about the Ghislaine. I don't know why that was a mod. Oh, you know what, Peter? I know what you did as far as trying to be clever with the spelling of Ghislaine. From now on, though, just say Ghislaine. The chat tool in Twitch is going to hold up anything that has pornography or curse words in it. I apologize if sometimes I use the S word. I say shit or bullshit. I do not use the F-bomb unless I'm repeating a title that was used by somebody else. I apologize if I've ever used that word in anger. I have a couple times. It's not classy to use it. Tina Brown is making there's a lot of Tina Brown videos right now over the last couple of years doing interviews about her magazine and about the effort that she had afterwards, loosely tied in with Radar and Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, it comes down to Jeffrey Epstein and Trump again. Look, if Trump was a billionaire, you really think, let's say Trump is all the horrible things that you think, okay? Does Trump really need Jeffrey Epstein? If Trump wanted to do bad things, did he really need him? Trump is not stupid. If Trump wanted to do some bad things, okay, entertain it. If he wanted to do really bad, illegal things involving young people, do you think he is so stupid as to use a guy who's obviously intelligence connected and heavily photographed at parties as his route to do so, even if he were to entertain doing bad things with kids? Do you really think he's going to find the most photographed guy at the party who's with an investment company in the CIA and use that person as his route? Even if Trump was all the bad things that people say he was, and he's done a lot of bad stuff in his life, please, just consider that. No, he would use an avenue that people wouldn't know about, that wouldn't come back to him if he were to do that. If Trump did do such things, and maybe he did, the least likely route that he would have used to entertain those bad things would have been someone as famous and as visible and as wealthy as Jeffrey Epstein. That's just a fact. He's the least likely person to have used. So it's just insane, the stories that people want to be true about Trump and where they're looking to find their evidence. Good morning, Sue. How you doing? Good morning. Ben Norton. I should know that name. So, do I need to do a review, guys? It's been an hour and a half already. The first 15 minutes, I had an audio glitch. Apologize for that. We'll do the quick recap for those who are just joining here. I'll talk through it one more time. Let's start with Maduro. Christy, let's start with Maduro again. Maduro arrested by the United States. The president of Venezuela arrested. Multiple accusations have been made about Venezuela and Maduro. Maduro, as broken in a story by the New York Times, not me, in 2012, was a religious devotee of a man of this religious figure in India named Satya Sai Baba. That's S-A-T-H-Y-A space S-A-I space B-A-B-A. He's kind of Hindu, kind of not. He's a religious figure who claims to be a god who's been reincarnated, etc. Satya Sai Baba, you can go to his Wikipedia page there. He was born in 1926. He died in 2011. He was an Indian godman and philanthropist. At age 14, he claimed to be the reincarnation of Shirdi Sai Baba and left his home saying, "My devotees are calling me. I have my work to do." You can read him on his Wikipedia page. This is, I believe, because this is a recent WION news article out of India, that Maduro was and still is a religious devotee, or at the very least the optics are that he wanted it to be. Now that itself may also be a lie. If you wanted it to kind of keep it on the down low, why would you put all this religious stuff in your political office? That's a great question. Evidence is not proof of anything. You know, sometimes you should look at the evidence. If the evidence is too blatant, you should go, that was almost too easy. When I see other people, however, ignoring the evidence, even if it's easy, I lend more credence to it. So, for example, if Satya Sai Baba, if his office was filled to the rim with Turning Point USA flyers and signed posters of Charlie Kirk, I would go, that's weird. Especially if thousands of other outlets were talking about it all the time. I'd be like, that's weird. But no one wants to talk about this data point. So even though it's obvious, it's almost too obvious and too easy, the fact that everyone's ignoring it makes me go, interesting. So he's a follower since 2005. This is a story that was broken in the New York Times in 2012. This religious figure. Big Wikipedia page on him. I haven't read his full history, but I guess a bunch of people with a lot of money had followed this fellow. The funeral was attended by Modi when he died in 2011. And other people that follow him include the previous communications director of the United Nations and still one of the most politically powerful and connected people in the world, the man from India, SHASHI Tharoor, who speaks with a richer Oxford English accent than most people from England. SHASHI Tharoor has been also caught and has, in his own words, has been at times for decades a follower and a devotee of this Satya Sai Baba in India. Makes me wonder how well SHASHI Tharoor knew the president of that was just arrested and is now detained from Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. SHASHI Tharoor is a prolific writer, has written multiple books about India being the future of the world. Those books right now are mostly published by Skyhorse Publishing, the same publisher that is behind many of the RFK Jr., Robert Malone, Michael Flynn, and Children's Health Defense books. Just saying. SHASHI Tharoor also, around the time of September 11th, 2011, was a communications director for the United Nations and the most frequent right-hand person of the then head of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. And we know that on the morning of September 11th, 2001, Kofi Annan, SHASHI Tharoor, and Klaus Schwab got out of a cab and went into a bar in Manhattan, and at least two of them claim to have witnessed one of the planes flying into the Twin Towers. Now, SHASHI Tharoor also recently returned to New York City after many, many years, to pay his respects to the events of September 11th, 2001. He did so at a time during the late summer of this year, oddly timed with various events regarding the life of Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie Kirk, just as a reminder, made some very bold statements in May of 2025 regarding encouragement for the United States to restrain from any involvement with conflict between Pakistan and India. Again, Charlie Kirk isn't necessarily a person who gets to call the shots and stuff like that. That's an absurd thing that a podcaster and an influencer who goes to college campuses would have power. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough to cause a little bit of a wrinkle in the podcast circuit. And also, more importantly, Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, is the current top financial funder, and at least as far as visibility goes, supporter of J.D. Vance, who is married to a beautiful American woman who is of Indian ancestry. And this has been a big complication because while India seems to have political inroads into a variety of other candidates and political officials, including having one of their own running the National Institutes of Health in the United States of America, they may not necessarily have such an easy control and inroad with J.D. Vance. It's complicated because Americans are not a race. Really. We're a mix. It's a unique nation. And I think and J.D. Vance's wife is a very interesting textbook case sample, something which has happened before in the United States of America, where when people used to come from England or France and in Germany, at some point they become American, even though they're ethnically still English, French, or English or Irish or etc. So we have an allegiance battle right now to deal with. Anyways, all of this stuff wraps up and becomes incredibly interesting. First of all, because no one will mention India. Second, because of the obvious conflict of interest or conflicts which are being demonstrated by the Indian national running the National Institutes of Health of the United States of America, Jayanta Bhattacharya. But also because there was another Indian cult religion that was spoken about in a book that came out on September 9th, 2001. Remember, it was just 2 days later that SHASHI Tharoor himself, along with Klaus Schwab and Kofi Annan, got to witness the planes flying into the Twin Towers. But on September 9th, 2001, a book, Germs, came out, where the entire first chapter of the book, I never thought much about it until now, the entire first chapter of the book is devoted to slandering another Indian cult religion that was run by a man named Rajneesh, and even used them as evidence that biological weapons are a real thing. Now, in this case, this is a cult. that was buying up land and recruiting people in the state of Oregon. And allegedly, according to the book, in 1984, actually most of this is documented, but in 1984, they were trying to expand their political influence in Oregon, this Indian cult, the Rajneesh. And at one point, somebody from the cult made a decision to throw some salmonella-laced lettuce leaves into a salad bar nearby, causing some injuries and I think some deaths, which I guess were breadcrumbs successfully so that the FBI was able to figure out that it was indeed that cult that did it. Sloppy work. But we are to believe, and I never questioned why it was so easy to figure out who did it. It's probably because they were sabotaged. Now, far be it from me, again, to want to defend, some hedonistic, money operation taking advantage of people out in Oregon. But look, if they were sabotaged by people throwing salmonella-laced lettuce onto a salad bar somewhere, they should be accused of things that they're guilty for and not things that they are not guilty of. And in this case, I think that they were sabotaged. So the idea in people's heads that it's possible for these religious cults that come out of India to be responsible for biological terrorism is an idea that was seeded in the chapter 1 of the book Germs that came out September 9th, 2001, written predominantly, or at least supposedly, primary author Judith Miller, whose own father was Mr. Entertainment out in the Vegas area, working for Kirk, who is, of course, the top funder of Armenian genocide recognition. I believe this stuff is connected. I just wonder what why the Indian cult and this Rajneesh and the Satya Sai Baba are not the same groups. You can go to Google AI and you can see how the two compare side by side. Sai Baba is suggested to be in a more favorable light. The Rajneesh is they're a little bit more negative about it. There's a lot to think about here. I think I'm sold on the possibility that this stuff matters. I think that this stuff matters. And, of course, Candace Owens factors into it. Yet, once again, she's probably completely unaware of it, though. But even she right now has come out on Twitter and said that in a very mocking way that the U.S. did the right thing. Of course, she's, again, along with the other people in the citizen media, the fake controlled media, along with the what's his name, Tucker Carlson, along with Kim Iverson, they're and as you can see, I'm starting to loop here a little bit. They're not willing to even take on the reasons why Donald Trump said the United States should or should not be. Not even to take on the reason why Trump said that this invasion is happening. They're just trying to mock it. Very, very interesting. And I think that I think I can trace where they're all getting their money from. Paul Massey is easy because he's obviously getting funding from India. I think that's pretty clear right now. That's one of the reasons why he was recruited by Ro Khanna. That's where Paul Massey is right now. Paul Massey is fighting for the children. But the children that Paul Massey is fighting for right now are almost 40 years old. And Paul Massey is fighting for survivors, meaning people that are not dead. I'm fighting for the kids that are dying today. Right now that they're dying today. I'm not fighting for people that didn't die 10, 20, 25 years ago like Paul Massey is. Like Ro Khanna is telling Paul Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene to focus on. A little bit of a difference. And most of the fake alt-lying media wants everyone to focus on exactly the same things that Paul Massey and Ro Khanna and Marjorie Taylor, pain in the ass, want people to be thinking about. So I think that's my show for this morning, hour 47. I think that's enough. Hello, Peter. Again, a couple more comments here. Thomas, pain in the ass. Yeah, the more Thomas Massey wants people to think about these things which are not impacting people every day, the more I can't stand him. Hey, you know what? I think Trump is right about Massey. I think Trump is right in this case. As 2025, Venezuela has a total of 24 wins at the Big Four international beauty pageants, most by any country in the world. Well, good for them. I don't follow those types of things. Time will tell if U.S. interference in a sovereign government would be beneficial to the people of that country. I have no idea. I don't even really understand what's going on. All I can do is see some critical things that no one seems to have picked up on or be reporting, which I think can provide maybe some clues and some insights. I believe they do about a bigger picture. Which let's put it this way: nobody is going to say right out front exactly what's happening. You will not find it on CNN. You're not going to find it on Fox News. It's not going to come at you through InfoWars. And it's most likely not going to come at you through another YouTube channel with hundreds of thousands of followers and enough money coming at them through Substack accounts or online book sales for them to be able to pay the bills. It's probably not going to come at you through that way. No one's going to be tweeting about it in that class. It would be nice. You know what? If it did, that would be great. I could quit this. I'd be done. But it's not going to happen. So the best you can get is you can aggregate all the different lies and all the different things that people are not talking about, and you can do your own work. I know I'm providing value on this stuff here, and then we can go from there. But the truth is not going to be out there provided to you on a silver platter by anybody at this point. If I had it, I'd give it. All right, I think that's enough for now. Hopefully you guys have a good morning. Oh, my goodness, it's 12:30. Holy cow. Well, that's good because anyways, I got to get to work on a few other things. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for joining. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live. It was 12:30. Monday, January 5th, 2026. This was 1447. I'm not going to make any edits to it. I'm just going to cut out the beginning, and maybe I'll do another one later, maybe not. I hope you guys stay well, stay positive. Keep researching, keep archiving, I should say, and analyzing, thinking for yourselves. Think of all the questions that no one else has asked, the ways of looking at data, such as why did they put the Rajneesh in this book? And I don't know. I think that's enough for now. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for the great Q&A. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live, HOUSATONIC. Like and subscribe if you want to. I have flatlined on a miraculous subscriber count, flatline on YouTube. It is so awesome. Any support is appreciated. I need to. I'm doing cost, going through my costs right now, expenses, and well, I think that's enough for now. All right, P.O. Box 505. The rest of the information is on the web. I work to make an archive and collect information there. That's my main output. This is just a podcast to talk things through, to have some interaction, and to do some assessment of that. I am not a podcaster, but this is a podcast, of course. And thank you. Take care. God bless. And I will see you guys tomorrow.